Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another interview at the Inner Changemaker. Today, I got a pretty awesome guy with me. He is the founder of Create Your Own Life podcast, which helps entrepreneurs live the lives they know they were meant to live. He studied literature at Oxford University. I didn't even know that about him. And he obviously specializes in online social networking. And his podcast was also ranked #1 in the iTunes new and noteworthy section. I've known this guy for the last couple years. We've been on such similar journeys. And it's amazing to just see his growth. And, you know, he's one of the only people I know that interviews some amazing big name guests. He's had people that have been on his show. Like, I wish I can get these people on my show. Like, that's how serious it is. And he recently was featured on Forbes. His company Get Featured, which I'm sure we'll talk about, helps entrepreneurs get their message out there by appearing as guests on podcasts. That's been blowing up. So, dude, Jeremy Slate, welcome to the show, brother.
Jay, I'm so stoked to be here, man, because I love everything about your brand and what you're doing, and it's just helping people, and I'm stoked to be here, man.
Yeah, hey, man, we've been trying to do this for a little while now, and I'm so glad to just have you on. Dude, you were recently featured on Forbes, and like we were just chatting about this. Like, you've been in the entrepreneur. I think it's great because you've been doing, your own thing, creating your own life, really living and embodying the message that you preach. How does it feel to get featured on Forbes? I know you recently turned 30 as well, so like how do all these combinations of all these things, like how does that feel to you, man?
It's crazy because I feel like where I'm at now is not the level of success that I want to be at, but I feel like, holy crap, have I done some stuff in 3+ years at this point in time.
Yeah.
And honestly, like for me, it was kind of a big validation point because when I jumped into entrepreneurship, my family wasn't supportive. I lost a lot of those friends I had at that point in time in my life. And to kind of, have new and better friends now, but also get the validation of, hey, you're doing the right thing. Hey, you're helping people. Hey, you're doing a great job is amazing. Because a lot of those people that disappeared have now come back and like, great job, man. You're awesome. It's like, you were just telling me to screw myself 2 years ago, but it's fine because, it's really cool to kind of finally see that, I guess, hate turn into admiration because you're doing something cool and you're helping. So that's been the cool part about it.
Yeah. Well, what did they say? I mean, like at first they reject you, then they like hate you, and then they love you, or like something like that, right? As I feel like you're probably experiencing a bit of that, and people coming back around your network. It's really fascinating to me, Jeremy. So, dude, I remember when we hung out we both spoke at the conference in Orlando. I think earlier
Podfest.
Podfest. And we were just hanging out, and you were sharing with me your background. So for people that don't follow your show, by the way, you guys need to check out Create Your Own Life podcast. Because I mean, like I said, he's got some amazing individuals on there. But what were you doing before the podcast?
I was a high school teacher. That's the crazy part. I was a high school teacher until
so tell us about that. Like, what were you teaching? Actually, let's go even a bit further. Like, were you like super academic? Like, in high school, like, how did you know you were gonna be a high school teacher? Like, was that like?
This is the weird part about it. I was on like two diametrically opposed parts of the spectrum my whole life.
Okay.
I was a really good wrestler in high school. I've been a competitive power lifter for years, but I've also been like a brainiac. So it's kind of weird in a lot of ways. So
okay.
I went to school, didn't really know what I wanted to do for college. So I'm like, all right, I'll be a professional student now. That sounds great. So I studied all different religions because I've always been interested in spirituality, different types of religion.
Sure.
I studied ancient history, philosophy. I studied a lot of Stoic philosophy in school. So I did a lot of stuff like that. And I got to the end of undergrad, and luckily enough, Seton Hall's like, we're going to send you to Oxford for like a exchange program. I'm like, that's awesome. So I ended up going there. I studied literature, still have no clue what I want to do. And I get out and, I kind of talk to my parents about it, and I'm like, I really don't know what I want to do. Like, my mom's like, go to grad school. So I go to grad school, and I start working on this master's in ancient history. And all this time, I've ran a personal training company in the background. I've been a competitive fitness guy for years and years and years. So I had like 8 to 10 clients in the background while I was doing this. And I get out of grad school, and I'm like, oh crap, like, what do you do now? So it seemed like the next logical thing was to be a teacher. It wasn't like what I wanted to do. It was just kind of like I had no idea. And my parents had been kind of pushing me this way because my mom was the valedictorian of our high school class, but didn't go to college. My dad got kicked out for setting a desk on fire and shoving it out the window while it was burning, and didn't graduate high school. So I come from a family where to them education was really, really important. It's a super, super blue collar town.
Yeah.
So to them, getting a teaching job was like a big deal because it was like, oh man, he made it. Right. So I was kind of doing it by their playbook at that point in time and accepting their reality just because I had no idea. Like I just didn't know. And that was kind of where
available.
I was. Yeah, and that's kind of where I was in the teaching space, and I kind of wondered why I hated life every day. And it's crazy, man, because like we love social media and we love everything else, but it makes teaching so much different now because these kids would like try and like get you really angry so they could get you on YouTube, or they would do all this like crazy stuff. So like just every day you're just like, God, I don't want to do this anymore. But I didn't really have another option at that point in time. So that's kind of like where I was at that point in time.
What were you teaching again?
I was teaching honors U.S. history. I was teaching teaching about the Constitution and the Civil War and all that kind of stuff. Like that was literally like what I was doing in my life. I tell people now, and they're like, "Are you serious? Like that's what you were doing?"
Yeah.
Because they don't see it, but because number one, I don't look the part. I'm a very fit and buff guy, but number two, like I'm very much in, I guess, the tech space now. So people just find it very weird to learn that.
Wow. I mean, that I remember like when you told me, I was a bit shocked myself, and I was like, wow, you just didn't, I didn't know that about you. But so interesting. So did you go from doing the high school, the teaching gig into podcasts? Like why did you, or was there a bit of a transition there?
There was a transition, and there was a lot of things in that transition. So this was in 2013. I ended up leaving the teaching job.
Yeah.
And at the time, my wife had been approached about a network marketing opportunity. I had never seen this before, and I'm like, oh, dude, I'm gonna make like $1 million next month. This is gonna be awesome.
Yeah. Which one was it? I don't know. This is so interesting.
It's Market America. It was.
Okay. Yeah.
It's actually pretty big in Toronto, so you may have heard of it.
Yeah. I've heard of it.
And so I ended up doing that, and I made a little bit of money over the course of about a year and a half or 2 years. And it was tough though, man, because one of the hardest things in that is trying to get other people to succeed. And because a lot of times, they have life problems. They have all these different things. They're regular people, so they don't know how to sell. So it made it very, very difficult on me. So I was always looking for some other way out. So about a year and a half in, I started selling life insurance, which let me tell you, that's an interesting thing. If you're trying to sell, you got to sit down with somebody and say, so man, you're going to die. And they're just like, whoa. So I was doing that. I hated that. So now I'm doing network marketing. I'm selling life insurance. I'm not doing either too successfully. So I'm like, you know what? I got a better idea. Let's add a third thing and let's start selling private label products on Amazon. So I start doing that. And that's actually how I learned how to code websites. So I'm doing all three of these things at the same time, and I'm literally like imploding, man. Like I'm sitting, I had built an office in the basement of my house, and I'm literally imploding, staring at the wall for periods of time because the stress. Like you're not making any money, you're not really on purpose at all. You're just doing things to survive, and it was really, really, really tough. So then in 2015 in May, I ended up going to Peru for a month through Rotary International and doing a service project, and I have never seen people that poor in my entire life. Like I've just literally never been exposed to that. People that were living outside with tarps over them, all these different things. And I'm just like, holy crap, why am I doing all this?
Yeah.
Like what is the reason that I'm doing this? Like, am I doing it just for the money? Like who am I actually serving other than trying to serve myself and doing a really crappy job of it? So it kind of made me decide, all right, I'm going to create something for people. And I came back and I started a podcast called Rock Your Life. And it was horrible because I still was looking at it of how can I serve myself? And it wasn't until getting married in September that year and kind of realizing like you're actually an adult now. You're responsible for somebody other than yourself. Like, what are you going to do about this? Like, how are you going to do something about this? So that's when I quit everything I was doing. I left the network marketing gig. I stopped trying to sell products on Amazon, stopped selling life insurance. And I was like, all right, well, I need some form of employment. So I got working at a friend's content marketing company, and I actually really enjoyed it. I enjoyed writing copy and things like that. And I'm like, okay, now how am I going to do this thing where I'm going to serve people? And that's where I decided to take a course to learn how to podcast rather than just thinking I knew everything about it.
Yeah.
And that's where Create Your Own Life started. It started from this place of how can I serve and be a student rather than I'm awesome and I'm going to help you. Well, I don't know anything. And it's pretty obvious at that point in time that I don't know anything.
Yeah. I mean, Jeremy, I love how real you break it down for us, because I think, and this is part of the reason why I thought this collaboration would just be so genius. If at the lowest point, it would just be me and you hanging out in 2017 and saying, my God, look at these guys back in 2017. But you really, I mean, Market America, life insurance, black label products on Amazon. I mean, I think so many entrepreneurs, like it's almost like, they feel like they have to figure it out from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Right? And people don't really talk about some of these things that maybe they don't aspire, like not everybody aspires to, maybe do MLM or life insurance or what have you, but you have to do those things to always find your way, right? To be able to actually get motivated. And I love the point that, of serving yourself rather than serving others. Like, I remember for me in the beginning, like everything I went to, every meeting I'd go to, I'd say, how do I, that's great strategy, but how do I use this to make money? Like every question I had was like, how do I make money? You just talked about whatever email sequence. That's great. How do I use that to make money? So it was always about how does Jay get ahead? How does Jay benefit? So I'm glad that, I'm just glad to hear that you kind of pulled behind the veil to show us some of your thinking even back then.
That's so true though too, because I think especially like for network marketing, this was a big problem for me.
Yeah.
Like you find that, and I'm not saying network marketing is a bad thing. I have a lot of friends that have done very well in it, but like for me, it became to this point where every conversation I was having, I'm like not really listening and like, okay, how can I use this to, they said they may not be happy. How can I recruit them using what they just said? Right. And it's just, you start to hate yourself, man. You start to really hate yourself because you're not serving anybody but yourself, because you're like, all right, well, I need to make money now.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's tough, and you got to figure out how to serve. And I think that was the hardest thing I struggled with right away, because I quit my job, which is something I don't honestly recommend to people. Have a lifeline, because you're going to look at it from a point of service more than if you need to survive. Like I think some people like do great backed against the wall, but I also think we make horrible decisions that are based only on ourselves.
Sure. And you're very short term.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very, very short term. I went through, like, and this is part of the reason why you got to love Jeremy Slate, because I did the same thing. Like, I also quit my job and went traveling, and like, so, I mean, you gotta pick what's right for you. I love this so much because you've been out there creating your own life, right? And like, I know you mentioned it a little earlier, but how does your parents, like, coming from such a academic, family, like, how did they start viewing you, like, when you said, hey, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to create my own life? Because I think a lot of, like, entrepreneurs at every level, not even young, like, just everybody struggles with, how do I communicate to the people I love most around me that I'm going to go out there and create my own life? Like, how were you able to do it? And tell us some of that perspective.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jay, I guess this kind of deserves going a little bit deeper, because there was a lot more emotions at play this whole time when all this happened.
Sure.
At 19, I had what should have been a minor knee surgery, and the anesthesiologist didn't really do so well, and I had what you call a near-death or out-of-body experience, where I was kind of floating above myself in the room and like, oh, look, my parents are crying and I am in a bed. So I got last rites and all that kind of stuff at 19. And the interesting thing is, like, it didn't change my view at all. And I feel like it really should have. Then at 24, the real pivotal thing here, and what really caused a lot of this, is my mom had a stroke. Wow. I came home from working out at the gym, and I was supposed to I worked at that same gym, and I was supposed to be back there in like an hour. Come home and I can't find her, and I come home to find her. So I ended up, freaking out, calling the ambulance, calling my fiance at the time, who's now my wife, calling my dad off the golf course, and it really shocked the hell out of me, because it kind of made me look at mortality. It kind of made me look at this whole idea of, it's really like you may only have one shot to do this. And it's funny because I almost died myself and it kind of didn't do anything to me, but it was kind of almost losing somebody that close to me. And she's still with us, but she doesn't have like a lot of her abilities. She can't speak anymore. So there was kind of that on top of everything, which was pretty difficult. So at the time, I feel like my dad was kind of really going through a lot, and to tell him basically, F the way that you want to live your life and the way that you've built your entire life. Like I said, my dad didn't graduate high school. He started in a machine shop and worked his way up to the vice president of a company, the guy running a company, which I think nowadays if you came out of school is just not something they let you do because you don't have the level of education. So for like him, it really worked. So I was looking at his way of life and basically saying, screw you. So for a really long time, my dad would always call me up. Are you making money yet? Have you made money yet? What are you going to do about this? How are you going to handle this?
Yeah.
And it really started to shift. Honestly, when he started listening to my podcast, he became a fan of what I was doing. And it's funny because in my episode 0, I talk about the conversation he and I had, where I'm like, Dad, I want to create my own life. When I was kind of fixing his lawnmower one day after I just quit my job, and he goes, good luck with that, bud. And he kind of took a little bit of pleasure in that, oh man, these people are listening to this story about me. And he went through this whole thing and he became a fan of what I was doing and started telling people about what I was doing. Yeah. And then last year when I was in Inc., it was a really big deal sending it around the office. Like, look what my son's doing. Look at how great this is. Look at how hard he's working.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool that I just had to stay on this purpose and stay on the vision of I want to help people. And if you stay on that purpose, the people that really care about you and really want to see you do well, they will change around. But it's a really good way to also weed out the people that don't want to see you do well.
Yeah.
Because my best friend at the time was my cousin, and we haven't spoken in 3 years when I started network marketing. And I just wanted him to look what I was doing. I didn't care if he joined me. I didn't care whatever. I just wanted that validation.
Sure.
And he said to me, I know what you're doing, and I'll do whatever I have to do to see you fail. And my wife literally almost hit the floor. And that was my best friend at the time. But here's the thing. You take off that veil you'd always looked at that person by, and you're like, he's telling me I'm going to be in a wheelchair by 30 from working out. When I played football and tore my ACL, he laughed at me. You kind of the veil you had looked at these people through comes off your eyes.
Yeah.
And by really doing something bigger and better, it kind of makes you realize, oh crap, what am I doing? So I think really if you stay on purpose, it's going to help you weed out the people that don't belong there, because they can't think with that. They can't think with doing something bigger than hanging out in the parking lot on the weekends, drinking beer and going to the movies. Like they can't think with anything bigger than that. And the people that really do care about you and really do want to see you succeed, if you stay on purpose, they're going to flip back around, but you have to see the bigger vision.
Jeremy, I mean, we're getting chills here. Like we're getting a true reality check of what it takes to be an entrepreneur in the first few years. Right?
Yeah,
to have those conversations. I was recently, dude, I so get it, because I was recently reading this book. I don't know if you guys can see it here. The Big Leap. Doesn't matter if you've read it or not. I'm going to go through the main point of what you need from it. It talks about the upper limit, right? And one of the reasons people like upper limit is when you're about to succeed, right? Or when you have some, like you close the biggest client you've ever had, or you hit a certain level of success, that we have this baseline of success that we feel that we deserve. So if we're over the baseline, then it has to equal itself out somewhere, right? Maybe we get some type of sickness, or maybe someone gets in an accident, or there's something that always happens, right? Because our baseline of success is where it is at. So one of the things it talks about in the book, I remember this, is that there's like 3 or 4 different factors to you upper limiting and like moving this baseline up. And one of them is the guilt towards your parents, towards your teachers and leaders.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Because you learned at a young age, like you learned from them what it is to like live, they taught you like all these like habits and amazing things. And so if you're thinking all the way up here, if your parents and your teachers are here and you're trying to live up here, there's a little bit of a guilt while you're on this journey, because it would mean that you're telling them that you're better than them subconsciously. Like there's all these things at play Man, you brought up this crazy thought like while you're going through that, because I think a lot of people are going through
I got to read that book now. That sounds freaking brilliant. Like, because that's literally exactly what I was trying to explain. But go ahead.
No. Like, and that's and like I was flipping through it the other day because I was like, am I upper limiting? You know what I mean? And it becomes like this verb. But dude, I mean, I think so many people right now. If you're listening to this, you're watching this, go make sure to follow Jeremy Slate at Create Your Own Life podcast. I mean, he's pretty big. You're Jeremy Ryan Slate, right? On Facebook.
I'm only gonna. I'll give up my guilt on that. The only reason I use my middle name is because there was a cowboy actor also from New Jersey named Jeremy Slate, and this is an old hat SEO trick that if you can rank for one keyword, and get an authority for it, you can outrank other keywords. So I'm ranking for Jeremy Ryan Slate to outrank Jeremy Slate, and it worked. So anyway,
forget that cowboy. Is fame. Like it's and I love how real you're keeping it, man, because I don't think a lot of people talk about some of these things, you know. And first few years of entrepreneurship, this is when it gets the most real, right? And people always have questions. I'm sure you get emails all the time, like, how do I get over this? Like, how do I get over this fear? And like, what's really behind those questions are the types of tough conversations that you have to have with friends in your life, with family members in your life, with whoever in your life that doesn't support. If they're not on board to go where you're trying to go, where the life that you're trying to create, I mean, they're only essentially holding you back or pulling mental energy from you.
Yeah.
Right.
And the crazy point to that, though, Jay, is they talk about the 5 people that surround you and you're kind of the average of them.
Yeah.
If I looked at those 5 people that were around me in 2013, I haven't talked to any of them in what is this, 2017, 4 years. The people that surround me now are people that are pushing me.
Yeah.
And the people that surrounded me before were people that were pulling me. I don't want to sound like I'm better than the group, but I was somebody that was really trying to work my butt off and create something. So I got made fun of for that. I got bullied for that. I got brought down for that. And the people I've surrounded myself with now, like yourself, like you're like, hey man, you could do it. We're all gonna do this together. This is gonna be awesome. Like look at the difference in that. Like it's crazy that you really are the average of who's around you.
Yeah. Jeremy, I mean, I love how real you're keeping it, and I totally agree. Speaking of people around you, you are only, I mean, now we know the story of why you started the podcast and like how that all became. But you're like, when I look at the podcasting game today, and there's a few people that I really look at doing podcasting really well and being able to do great interviews. You've had such amazing big names, on your show, from Grant to Tom Bilyeu, just some of the common people we've had. But you've also had some amazing guests that I haven't had on. What's the thinking behind that? Like, because I get asked all the time, so I got to ask you. You're one of the only people that I know that interviews other people that are just creating at such a higher level. What's the thinking behind having the biggest names on your podcast?
It's funny because if you listen to other shows, you'll probably get this. Like people have the idea when they're a podcaster that they're the expert. And I think for me, it was kind of always keeping in mind that I'm the student. And I want to learn from the best. So I'm sure my listeners want to learn from the best. So why am I always trying to get the best is because I want to learn what makes them different, what makes them special, what makes them tick. Because here's the thing too, like a lot of us are early in entrepreneurship. Like there's some moments, man, there's a roller coaster where they really suck. Like they really suck. Yeah. And you want to see somebody that's made $1 billion or $500 million. They've been in those exact same moments. They've done the exact same things. So that's really what I want to show people. And it doesn't show them from showing them me. It shows them from showing successful people. So why do I try to get the most successful? Because I'm honestly trying to learn from the best and teach from the best. And if I just looked at, getting certain people, it would be an ego thing. And for me, I tried the ego thing and it screwed up royally and nobody listened. I did a podcast for 2 months that had 200 downloads over the period of 2 months. That's atrocious. But it's when I actually look to learn from people that it changed. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think what you mentioned there, I always say like podcasting is a great business hack, but it's one of the best life hacks, period, because this is modern day mentorship. Yeah. Like I'm just looking at your list right here. I just pulled it up in terms of people that you're interviewing. I mean, like these are people need to know these names, right? From Russell Brunson to Noah Kagan, Ralph Potts. I love his book on vagabonding. Chris Ducker. Jarrett Grossman, YouTube sensation, like Steve Sims, like these are like some of the people that are really kicking butt. And this is like, I didn't even scroll down. Like, this is like, this is on the first page, man. And this is great, to have, also the big names, but also the movers and shakers, people that are in action, that are creating something, and to be able to learn from them. Right. So I think you figured out one of the best hacks for sure.
But I think also it goes back down to your purpose. Like a lot of people, like for me, the actual phrase "create your own life" literally comes from that conversation I was telling you before, and I have my dad. So there's a lot of people that have been in that moment. They've been in that place, and they want to look at how they do that. Like when I had Grant Cardone on, like one of the first things I said to him, he goes, "Oh, so he didn't even know what the name of the show he was going on, first of all, because he's Grant Cardone, he doesn't really care."
Sure.
So I was like, he's like, "What's the name of your show?" "Create Your Own Life." He goes, "That's freaking awesome, man." Like, that's what I like. It gives people that sort of reaction because it speaks to them as a spiritual being, or as a soul, where they want to be able to do that. They want to create something. They're being held down in some way, shape, or form, and they want to do it. And I think that's really what it comes back down to, is that purpose.
What has been some of what are maybe some of your worst interviews? And what's like the best interview? Like, for people that are listening to this and like, dude, Jeremy Slate is ripping it. And he, he's way better looking without a shirt on than a shirt off than Jay. So I'm going to go check out his podcast. What are some episodes that people could start just to get a little bit of a color to your podcast?
Probably the Cardone one, because it was just a lot of fun for me, just as somebody to get to learn from somebody I really admired. Jeff Hoffman from Priceline was amazing, because we really, to build a company that big, I think it's really important to have the right people around you. So I kind of asked him, like, what's your strategy like for finding staff? What's your strategy like for running those staff? Because to me, that was really important. And, honestly, just Chris Guillebeau too, because I really enjoy the idea of travel and how you can experience life through that. And Chris and I really got deep into that. As for like episodes that didn't really go so well, I had an interview about 2 weeks ago, and he shall remain nameless. But it kind of comes up to the idea of like, the whole buzzword of 2016 and 2017 is this whole idea of like authenticity, which they just used to call being a human being. But anyway, this guy comes on and he's like, "Oh, I'm so authentic and I'm going to help you," and blah, 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 blah. So he comes on and I welcome him to the show, and he goes, "Long time listener, first time being on." I'm like, "You didn't even know who I was 10 minutes ago." So that's just, first off, that's a lie.
Right.
And then he couldn't like even like be inside, do the interview. So I hear airplanes and I hear birds and I hear all this stuff. So it just kind of like, it just was about from a place of ego and look how freaking awesome I am, rather than helping people. And I ended up not publishing the interview of somebody that's a pretty big deal in the online space, because I was like, this isn't going to help anybody. Like, it's just about look how awesome I am and look how I can promote myself. So honestly, like, because of that, there's been episodes I haven't aired. It's been very few, but there's been a few I haven't aired because it has to be from a place of help. And for me, those episodes I outlined before were like really big helps. Like even the Russell Brunson interview, we don't talk about funnels in that whole interview. We talk about, how did you get to be the guy you are? Like, who were your mentors? What were you doing? Because to me, that's interesting. Like funnels and things like that, they're going to change over the years, man. There's always going to be new tactics. Yeah. But what gets you to where you are is something that's timeless.
I love that, because I think there's so many different podcasts out there that will deep dive into the funnels, that will deep dive into the marketing, right? But when you're listening to something like the Inner Changemaker, Create Your Own Life, like, it needs to be about how that person, actually got there. And, some of the things that you shared with us in terms of having those tough conversations, having those moments where you wanted to make ends meet and take the pain away from whether it's your mom or your dad or just people in your life. I mean, those are the real things. Like that's like the real picture of being a leader, being an entrepreneur. Right. Yeah. And I love that. I did the same thing with, I had Nicholas Kuzmich on, and he's known notoriously as the #1 Facebook ads individual. And we said, "Hey, Nick, we're not going to talk about Facebook ads at all. Like, I don't want to hear a tactic. I don't want to hear a strategy. I know you're going to be on 10 other podcasts talking about Facebook funnels and all that stuff, but I just want to talk about who you are." And it turned out to be one of the most powerful episodes, because he shared things that he's just never talked about. Right. So dude, how do you, like, you're one of the only people I know that like actually doesn't have every interview that they do. You'll just like churn people off. Like, how do you do that? Like, I don't know how to do that. Like,
what do you mean? Like
how do
turn
you
away
not,
or what?
Well, not turn away, but like, how do you like not put someone's episode up? Like, do you like let them know? Like, they just kind of hope they forget about it? Is there a strategy? Because I mean, you run Get Featured, right? And you guys get people on podcasts. So is there a policy, to this? Like
there, as I said, there's been very few of them. So I've had to kind of have those conversations on a one-on-one level with those people.
Yeah.
And kind of be like, this is, I'm not publishing because of X, Y, and Z, and also giving them an opportunity to kind of look to do something again, which I know not a lot of shows are going to do, but maybe they're just not in the right frame of mind. Let's give it a shot. And if it comes out to still be about ego, which in those several situations, it was still ego. It was still,
so you
look
did
how
the interview
awesome.
Twice.
With a couple different people.
Right.
I gave them an opportunity to redo it, and it just didn't happen because they're like,
Okay.
well, I'm awesome, and I gave you gold. And it's like, this isn't going to help anybody. It just tells me how awesome you are.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Have you ever talked to anybody like that? Like to get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no.
Like,
I totally get it. That's why I'm like, I don't know how to say like you didn't make the cut type thing.
It's really tough because I'll say now, like I have 200 and like almost 80 episodes that are live, and I've done about 300 interviews. I've only not published 3.
Yeah. It's super rare.
So that's a pretty good rate. So I handle those on a one-on-one thing because I feel like to make a blanket policy on that would be very, very difficult. You know what I mean? So in terms of that, that's kind of how I've really looked at it. You know what I mean? And with Get Featured, we really have a process we put people through to make sure that's not a problem of, how can we help the audience? How can we teach them something? Because as a podcaster myself, I would die if I put somebody on a show and they're just like, I'm awesome, I'm great, I'm cool, and I'm the one putting them on the show.
Yeah.
You've got to teach the audience because you've learned this from doing your own show. The bigger thing is the message you share. If it impacts people and you're not trying to sell, they're going to come back because you're the person that gave them value. The universe is just interesting like that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's we're ending, we're going to wrap up soon enough, but I know we're chatting a bit about this like off the record, but we're chatting about this now. So, I'm so curious, how has your message evolved, right? From going from the failed podcast to, interviewing the big names. Like, what are maybe some of the evolutions of your audience? Because I don't think a lot of people understand this either, right? Because we're chatting about this and we're like, we're kind of, there's certain things that we want to get clear on, and there's certain things that you can only get clear on when you create more, right? And it's kind of a weird way that way. But like, how has your audience evolved, and how have you evolved over the last couple years, almost 2 years of running this?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a hater on this, but when I got started, I was kind of like, everybody's like, oh, you got to have an avatar and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, stupid. That's stupid. I'm not going to do that. So I felt like in the beginning, I'm like, I just was talking to myself at that point in time in my life.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I'd want to hear this, and I'd want to hear this, and I want to hear this. And it resounded enough, but it kind of was limiting at the same time because I was putting out there what I wanted to do. So really it was kind of finding out from the audience, what do they want? So it was asking my email list. It was asking the Facebook group. It was asking on the show, what are people looking for? And I was telling you this in our pre-chat. Interestingly enough, I found out for the most part, people hate my rapid fire questions. And they're like, I could just totally do without them. And you could just end on what's the thing you're most excited about right now.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like a great place to end. Though I think I will keep the question of what do you want written on your tombstone? Because everybody's just like, that's so profound. That's amazing. So it really has to come down to listening to your audience. And when you start out, you don't know. You just really don't know. You got to have it just right enough so it resounds to somebody, and just keep tweaking. Don't tweak everything all at once because you're never going to know what's changing it. But, change one thing at a time and ask for feedback. If you're not asking for feedback, and if you're not thinking you're always right, and you're like, a legend in your own mind, then you're really gonna. I'm sorry, I like to make side comments like that.
Yeah.
You're gonna find that people are actually gonna tell you what they want, and we found that out with Ryan Levesque, and we found that out in Russell Brunson's new book where he talked about ask them what they want and then give it to them. Whoa, that's quite a concept. So it's really, it really comes back to just asking people what they want. And like I said, when you start out, you don't always know. You don't always know, but you got to do the best you can do. But you got to have not have the ego to be able to get past that.
Jeremy, I do have a kind of a few last questions that I always like to ask. But what can people kind of expect from following you? Because I want people that are watching, listening to this, like, go check out Jeremy's podcast. He's one of the only people, like I said, over and over again, that interviews some of the biggest names. And he's one of the most consistent content creators that I know. What can people expect that, from following you in the next coming months and years, that what you're looking to do with Create Your Own Life?
Well, in the next probably month or so, we haven't announced the date yet, and so I don't know when this is going to come out. But I'll say we're looking at probably August of 2017 that we're going to be doing a brand relaunch, which doesn't mean that we're going to be like taking down any episodes or anything like that. But we have a new logo that's been worked on for a while. We have new website. We have new photography. So we're really trying to solidify the brand of Create Your Own Life, because now I really feel like I've hit it. I feel like I've really found it, because we just seen the growth we've seen in the last few months really tells me that I'm finally talking to the right people in the way they want to be talked to. So that comes down to asking people that are big how they created their own life, what that looked like for them. And when they don't want to answer a question, it's funny because it's one of my favorite things to do. Ask the same question as many times as you can in different ways till you get the answer. And eventually they're going to give you the answer. So I ask difficult questions, but in the nicest way possible. So when I get done and the guest gets done, they feel like, wow, that was awesome. And I got them information they probably didn't want to give, but that's going to be so helpful for the audience, because you get more out of looking at a flawed person than you do looking at this, perfect statue. So really that's what it comes down to, is I want to find out what those moments were, what those things were, and how they got out of it. And that's really what people can expect when they get from my show, because I want them to see they're not the only one fighting this battle. We can fight it together and we can create something. Because here's the amazing thing. Aesthetics and art are the greatest level of creation in the world. And if you can think on that level, you can pull yourself out of this muck.
I love that. I love that. And I totally agree, by the way, because you gotta, it's like you have to start creating. Like a lot of times in the beginning for me, it was like, I'm not ready. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to start creating. I remember thinking that a lot in the beginning. And sometimes I still get caught in that track, but it's like, that's not how you get ready. It's like you create first, right? And then you get some clarity. Because then you have a certain feeling towards how you create things, right? Whether it's your own life, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a blog post or a YouTube video, whatever it is, right? So I love that you pointed that out. Jeremy, let me ask you this. What is maybe the greatest kind of truth that you have discovered so far through this whole journey of interviewing hundreds of some of the brightest entrepreneurs and CEOs? What's the greatest truth that you've kind of come to terms with that, people could, I won't ask you put it on your tombstone, but something that has really changed your thinking?
Well, if we put it on my tombstone, we can say he was the biggest Van Halen fan ever. But I would say it's kind of what success really means. And it's funny because I've learned, number one, in my early 20s, I didn't give a crap what success was. I was just like, wanted to survive. But it was really, I learned that success was service, and success was how you help people, because the more people you help get what you want or what they want, you're going to get what you want. And that's what you really got to learn. How can I help people? How can I serve people? Because one of my favorite questions to ask people is, what does success mean to you? And it's interesting because so many of them say that it's getting themselves to a place where their daily life is covered and they can just help other people. Because it's when you think through a mindset of service that it really changes things.
And I love that you've been able to do that. This whole episode really is about staying on purpose, right? And being of service, and that journey of getting to that point of being of service and not trying to, self-serve or be coming from a place of ego. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this. And whatever your biggest takeaway is, please let me or let Jeremy know. I'm sure we're both very active on social. Jeremy, I do have one last question for you, though.
Yeah, man.
The show is called The Inner Changemaker, right? And I'm always so curious. What does being a change maker, what does that mean to you? What comes to mind for you?
It's not being okay with the status quo. It's not being okay with how people do certain things. We had an experience the other day, actually, that really, and all names are going to stay out of this, but we had an experience the other day that was, I had to look at the money versus how we're doing it. And my coach is somebody named Cameron Harold. I don't know if you know Cameron, but he said to me, "Come on, man, you're a human being. Like, think like a human being. Don't think about the money." And I think that gets to be you have to really think about why I'm doing this, who am I helping, and who am I serving? Because a lot of times, if we're not thinking about how we can be the change in the world and how we can serve other people, number one, you're going to make more money when you think that way. But number two, you're really going to let things happen the way that they're currently happening. Like, you're going to let the status quo continue. And here's an interesting thing I've learned in life. It's kind of, if you don't take some responsibility for a situation you observe, then you're now responsible for that situation. Because if you didn't do something for it, it's now partially your fault because you didn't do something to stop it. So that's really what I have to say that changes for me, is taking responsibility for the world I see around me.
Well, Jeremy, that is pretty profound, and I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, telling us and reminding us to stay on purpose. And that's a really great way of weeding people out, but really having that, the constantly create to be of service for others. I mean, this has been one of my favorite, episodes, thus far, of just kind of unveiling the behind the scenes. And so I honor you. I just want to take a few seconds and honor you for being a good representation of a change maker, for being a leader for your family, for being a leader, a good husband, right? For being, someone on social media and leading your tribe and leading your community, because it doesn't go unnoticed. And I'm not surprised to hear that your numbers have gone up since the last time I talked to you. I would heavily encourage everyone to follow Jeremy Ryan Slate, not the cowboy, the guy sitting in front of me, to follow him, because he's going to be doing some big things, and I highly, it's going to be quite an exciting journey to watch. So, Jeremy, thank you so much again for coming on and sharing your perspective.
Jay, this has been awesome, and I don't say this to just sound like I'm just giving you gratitude, but this literally has been one of my favorite interviews, because you just, I don't know, I don't feel like I've had that exciting of a life, but you've asked questions in such a way that it really made me reflect on the life I've lived. Like, dude, that's amazing. So thank you for this.
Dude, man, it's all about perspective, right? And hopefully people that are listening to this, whichever country you're from, whether it's day, night, afternoon, hopefully you're feeling good. You got that boost of energy. And if you do, let us know. Let us know. I need to ask for feedback. I don't do that enough. So this is me trying to ask for some feedback. I appreciate everyone that is listening to this, and we'll see you guys next time.